Desperate for attention, political windsock, Gavin Newsom starts running for president nearly 4 years before the next election. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. You likely noticed Gavin Newsom is already full throttle running for president, a decision that he made and began implementing more than 4 years before the next election in November 2028. And if you follow Gavin at all, you know just how empty and just how vacant this politician is. Gavin is consumed by one thing and one thing alone, and that is himself. And when he sits in his room at night, gazing into his own eyes and brushing his hair, Gavin dreams of one thing: winning the ultimate popularity contest, and that would be the presidency. Recently, Newsom is injecting himself into every national political issue to try and get this done. The Texas redistricting controversy was the most recent, threatening to squeeze out even more gerrymandering out of California to get even with Texas. A great excuse to get more attention, show off his hair, and a very obvious campaign ad.
Wake up, America. Wake up to what Donald Trump is doing. Here he is once again trying to rig the system. He doesn't believe in the rules. We can't stand back and watch this democracy disappear district by district. We have got to meet fire with fire. Donald Trump, you have poked the bear, and we will punch back. This is a serious moment. Wake up.
That's a campaign ad, pretending he cares about this issue. Newsom, the governor of a horribly gerrymandered state where Republicans have almost no representation in Congress, despite having about 40% of the vote in the last election, screaming about the dangers of Texas doing the same thing that his state has done. One of the many Dems humiliating themselves on this issue in recent weeks. And Gavin's other big play for 2028 has been on social media, where his staffers have been mimicking Trump-style tweets, yelling, as you see here, in all capital letters, insulting conservative TV hosts. Here's a meme of Gavin with Hulk, Kid Rock, and Tucker Carlson praying over him. So nice from the press office. And we will admit that Gavin's team, whoever dreamed this up, actually did manage to strike some gold, because it is a little bit funny. Some of them are clever. But as expected, the nerds that are running Gavin's campaign are overdoing the joke. The gimmick is getting tired. They're doing it all the time. And they're not going to stop until everyone is just rolling their eyes at these tweets. The same will happen to Gavin Newsom, who again started running for president way too early. And by 2028, Gavin demanding daily attention from everyone will have gotten very old. Over at Morning Joe, the show that controls so much of the Democrat Party, this whole manufactured fever for Newsom is already tired. Take a listen to this.
Gavin Newsom, he wants to own Donald Trump. He wants to be Donald Trump light. You can't be Donald Trump light. Hey, Gavin, talk into the camera and talk about making life more affordable, not only for people in California, but if you want to talk about people in New Hampshire, our people in Iowa, our people in South Carolina, they would like to know how their lives can be more affordable, not how you can own Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not running again.
Well, Joe, you're demanding things that Gavin Newsom cannot do. Objectively, Gavin Newsom is a terrible leader. He has caved to the absolute worst ideas and philosophies from the most radical part of his party, the California Democrats. California is filthy dirty. It has horrible schools. It is dangerous, lawless. Businesses are fleeing, big businesses. The state is still recovering from the humiliation of a botched $100 billion high-speed rail project. And it is so beholden to the lunatic tree huggers that they can't even build houses, and firefighters can't even clear dead brush in the forests, so they can't even prevent devastating wildfires from the north side of L.A. As you know, the Palisades has disappeared. Gavin has presided over all of this. But early last year, right when our culture turned, and it became clear that Trump was very likely heading back to the White House, Gavin Newsom flipped on a dime. Look at this video of him cleaning up his filthy, dirty state that he's destroyed for 7 years. Seen here cleaning up a homeless encampment on the side of the 5 freeway on the north side of L.A. They're kicking the homeless people out now? The same thing Trump is doing in D.C. while being called a fascist? Yeah, California did that a year ago. Here was Newsom in Oakland last February.
Governor Newsom focusing his energy this week on trying to clean up Oakland of trash and crime. Thursday, he announced he's sending state attorneys to help prosecute crimes in Oakland and the East Bay 2 days after he deployed 120 more CHP officers to the area targeting theft and crime.
We're particularly focused on vehicle theft and vehicle break-ins. That's unacceptable. Retailers that are smashed their windows over and over and over again, that's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable? It's suddenly unacceptable? Why now? What happened? Why was it not unacceptable the last 4 years? The moment that Gavin's political insiders told him that Trump was going to win in 2024, this happened. Gavin immediately knew that Trump wins 24, 28 is now wide open. Wouldn't be the same if it was Kamala. He knew 28 was his moment. And suddenly he started running California like somebody who actually cares about California. Cleaning up the trash, harder penalties for criminals, shutting down homeless camps, ending free health care for illegal immigrants, and admitting on Charlie Kirk's podcast that, yes, trans athletes in women's sports is ridiculous. Think of how callous it is for the leader of a state with 40 million people to torture his residents for years because that was the best political lane for him. Instead of getting in the power and actually trying to help people, what lane do I need to take here? And only relent when that lane shifts, as it did in early 2024 when we felt all that momentum get behind Trump and people said enough of living in this dump, which is what the country had become. Think of how callous that is. That is Gavin Newsom. And that same calculus will decide how he runs our country, our entire country. He is a windsock. There is nothing inside of him except a desire to get more and more famous and popular and powerful. And if in 2028 our culture sucks the way it did after George Floyd, this man will run for the presidency, win, and destroy the country purely to help him get reelected in 2032 because he doesn't care about anything, except his next political job. Kari Lake is a senior advisor for U.S. Agency for Global Media and joins us now, and she's also very good at politics and very good at engaging these libs and just how nasty they are. And I'm watching Gavin Newsom here and seeing him become a completely different person as he eyes the presidency, a flip that we saw about a year ago. This is what people despise about politicians.
Well, people won't forget what he did to California. I mean, he can try to be a chameleon and change and try to recreate himself, but he's the guy responsible for that phrase, "Don't California my Arizona, don't California my Florida." You name it, you add any state, from the mass exodus of people who just couldn't take it anymore, and it was because of Gavin Newsom's policies. And frankly, Democrat policies that have been dead end and don't work. They don't make life better, they make life worse. Now he's starting to realize that, oh wow, even the Democrat voters like President Trump's policies. They like it when there's law and order. They like it when the homeless problem is solved rather than just burning money, pouring money at it and watching it grow. And so he's now realizing that there's no way he can run on his old policies that ruined California, and he's making a big change. But people aren't going to fall for it.
You know what really is I think the grossest thing about Gavin Newsom is that when you look through his life, I mean, he was a baseball player. He was a handsome kid in high school. He grew up. He's got this beautiful family. He made a ton of money. He's got a vineyard. All the spoils of prosperous American life and all the spoils of beautiful California the way it once was, he has embodied his entire life. But he found that there was probably a better political career for him in destroying all of that than there was in just embracing it. You know, I mean, he could have been a moderate Democrat or a Republican. He could have run the state in a way that would have been good for people and helped people. But instead, he kowtowed to the Marxist left inside of California's Democrat Party and decimated all the things that he was able to have. He decimated that possibility for millions of people because it was a better lane for him politically.
You know, it's such a great state. I mean, being from Arizona, people in Arizona go to California. It used to be our our summertime kind of playground because it got so hot in Arizona. It got to the point where people didn't want to take that trip anymore to California because he ruined a beautiful state. I'm glad he's going to start turning it around now, even if it is for political reasons. At least it'll provide some relief for the people of California. But I think his political career is shot after what he did to California. No matter how much hair gel he uses, no matter, as you said, how beautiful his family is, it doesn't matter because he destroyed California and made so many people's lives miserable and put illegal aliens over and ahead of real Californians and American citizens. And that's unforgivable.
I hope you're right about that. I'm worried that it's that he's just going to coast right to that nomination because I mean, who do you think gets the nomination in 28? I don't see anyone else.
Hey, listen, I'm not saying he's not going to be the nominee because there's nobody in the Democrat Party right now. I mean, they're fledgling. When someone like Ruben Gallego thinks he's got a shot, you know, it's pretty bad in the Democrat Party. But I don't believe for 1 second the people of this country, after what the Democrats and frankly the political class put us through until President Trump stepped into office and has saved America, pulled us up from the flames and from the ashes and saved America. I don't think that anyone's going to vote for president for a Democrat after what they put us through over the past 4 years.
Yeah, and I tell you, I hope you're right because anybody go and visit that state, which is just such a beautiful place, and I live there and I go back sometimes, and every time I see it, it's worse. And I just think, how in the hell did you destroy something so amazing, so beautiful? How could anybody destroy that and then have the audacity to say, now I want to run the whole country? Amazing. Carrie,
that's the thing. Yeah. People are going to laugh at that one when he wants to run the whole country. Yeah, exactly. Don't California America.
Right. Exactly right. Carrie Lake, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, retail giant Bed Bath & Beyond is making a comeback. Not sure if you knew about this, but the company announcing today that they will not be opening or operating retail stores in the state of California as they go through this comeback, calling it the most expensive and risky environments for businesses in America. It's a system that makes it harder to employ people, harder to keep doors open, and harder to deliver value to customers. Think about that. Think about how big of a market California is, and for a company to make that decision. Marcus Lemonis is the executive chairman of Bed Bath & Beyond and is with us now. And sir, it's good to have you on the show.
Rob, how are you, buddy?
Good to see you. And you're bringing this company back. I used to love Bed Bath & Beyond. I was sad to hear when they went into, I think, Chapter 11. But you're coming back, and you're not coming back to Cali. Tell us why.
I think when you look at the cost of doing business across America, we want to be in markets where we can actually make a profit. We can provide a very competitive and fair wage, and we don't wake up every morning wondering if we're going to be sued by some class action lawsuit or overregulated by a local government. I think at the end of the day, when you look at businesses that have had to leave California, those are the principal reasons. And the fact that they keep telling us in California that they're the fourth largest economy in the world, I get it. But it's also probably one of the worst places to try to make a profit.
Isn't it something how every time you listen to Gavin Newsom talk about his state, you know, I noticed that a lot of these guys do this. He takes credit for all of the things that happen in his state despite him. You know, it's like California is a massive, thriving economy. It's a fantastic place. It can be a fantastic place to live. It can be a fantastic place to do business. But those things could be so much better if he wasn't there.
I think if we had more of a red-leaning philosophy around deregulating business and taking away some of the labor environment issues and litigation reform, it's a great place. Look, it's beautiful. The weather's beautiful. There's a lot of big cities there. And we do serve that through bedbathandbeyond.com. And we think we can pour all of that money into delivering a better product. For me, it's just about how do I prevent the shareholders of our company from feeling like every day they're waking up, they're going to get sued over something that they don't have anything to do with.
And there's other major companies, Tesla, Oracle, Toyota, Palantir, Nestle, Charles Schwab, John. I mean, you see it, Hewlett Packard. These are all companies that have left this state, that have left such an incredible market.
Yeah, when you look at that list of companies, I mean, you're talking about everything from technology to automotive to financial investing. It isn't like there's one thing. And I think we had a little news about In-N-Out Burger moving its headquarters, like it's a burger, and they're frustrated. So at some point, you know, I'd love to see Gavin Newsom out of office. I'd love to see a more responsible, balanced approach to how we manage businesses in there. And if you want companies to invest, you're going to need to incentivize them to do so.
And just so insufferable to watch this shift from him after all of these years of, I think, pandering to the worst ideas in that state, pandering to the worst philosophies that his state has proffered up. And now he flips over. And, you know, I remember him, you know, last year he's cleaning up garbage under the bridge, and he starts to moderate his politics, and he's trying to clean up his state to show something off that's not embarrassing and humiliating for him as he tries to work toward running the entire country. He is a chameleon. He has no real political identity.
Well, I think, you know, it's a little even further than that. You know, I have, as you know, I have the television show on Fox, The Fixer, and I can tell you that people in Hollywood don't want to be there anymore either. And once you've lost that audience, once you've lost the entertainment industry, I don't know where you recover from there. He has convinced California residents that they're living in a wonderful place, and there are parts of that that are true. But for small business owners that are trying to make a living, that are overregulated, I sympathize with small business owners, and that's really, you know, part of why we're getting out there and saying somebody's got to say something.
Yeah. Can I just ask real quick an update on the company? Because I was not aware, when we booked you today, I was not aware that your company was making a comeback. I don't think a lot of people know that.
No, so I took over as executive chairman about 1.5 years ago at a company called Overstock. You may have remembered Overstock.com. They exist today. Huge business. The company went out and bought the intellectual property of Bed Bath & Beyond a little under 2 years ago. We're now bringing stores back, but we're doing over $1 billion online at bedbathandbeyond.com, and people don't even know we're open. So as we start opening stores, we love everybody in California. We want to sell online, but we're not going to open there.
Good businessman. Marcus Lemonis. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, buddy. Take care.
All right, J.D. Vance, body slams white liberals on D.C. crime. That is coming up next.
It's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
So this was very interesting today. Not sure if you caught any of this, but our Vice President, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth all went and toured D.C.'s Union Station today, where all the trains come in, kind of the heart of the city, with the National Guard members now enforcing Trump's federalization of our Capitol to try and clean this place up. They were not welcomed by some white lefties, I should say, who showed up to scream at them for being there. Take a listen to this.
You big Nazis!
Yeah, you see the nerdy white guy. How often do you think he has to fight inner city crime? He's very, very angry, and he sure doesn't want anyone else in that city to live as safe as he does for some reason. Our vice president had a very savage response. Take a listen.
It's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
Chef's kiss. That's a beautiful response there. Stephen Miller, one of our favorites, also chimed in with this. Take a look.
We're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address one other thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been.
I love it. I do love it. All right, Gaddy Seralta is the director of the U.S. Marshal Service, essentially running this D.C. crime crackdown. And, sir, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. We've showed the stats the last couple of days. A lot of the problem is actually fixing itself just by putting more officers out there, National Guard. A lot of the crime stats are going down. We've seen that just in the last 10 days or so. The bad guys are too scared to commit crimes since Trump made the announcement and since this influx of officers and National Guard on the streets. How is it going in your estimation tonight, sir?
I think it's going fantastic. In fact, we're over 550 arrests. We've had 75, 76 firearms seized. I mean, let's imagine for a minute how many of those guns would have killed people had we not taken it from the bad guys. So, you know, we've had 5 homicide targets arrested. We've had 2 or 3 sex offenders arrested as well, and that's going to ramp up now.
What's your message to the people that showed up at Union Station today and screamed at our vice president, all of that nonsense? The people that are for some reason outraged that Washington is safer and there's going to be less dead black kids on the streets. What do you say to those people?
Well, what I would say to those people is that I am on the streets where our national and federal law enforcement are patrolling. I can tell you, sir, that I've spoken to the people in those neighborhoods. They are thanking us every day. Every chance they get, they thank us. They tell me that this should have happened 30, 40 years ago. You know, it's a community that has been hurting for decades. Yeah. And thanks to President Trump, we are now doing something about it.
Yeah, the irony is that you've got black mothers thanking you, and you have white liberals that live in Bethesda furious with you. And the irony of that is not lost on anybody. There was a ton of outrage over video we're going to show you right here. There was a Central American man arrested. He tries to run. He gets tackled. He started screaming. One of the words I heard was trabajar. He's screaming in Spanish that he's not a criminal, that he's just trying to work for his family. But the problem is that a little digging went through this, and we find that he is an illegal alien from Mexico who's been arrested last year for aggravated sexual assault of a child under. And he's entered the country illegally 3 times, and he sexually assaulted, allegedly, a child under 13 years old. If you saw the comments when that video first came out, the fury from the left about this man being taken down, it was unbelievable. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that's an unspeakable crime. And folks should listen before they speak.
There you go.
And individuals like that, he's not the only one. No. He's not the only one. He's not going to be the last one either. We're going to continue to clean the streets as per President Trump's request.
Yeah, that's well said. Director of the U.S. Marshal Service, Gaddy Serralta, thank you, sir, for taking the time. Thanks for the fight and cleaning up that city, our capital. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Our clearly corrupted intelligence agency is getting a nice clean out. DNI Tulsi Gabbard slashing her workforce by nearly 40%, and she joins us coming up next. Welcome back. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard cleaning out the rot in the intel community, and there's plenty to clean. Gutting her workforce by nearly 40%. Saving taxpayers $700 million. Think about how much money that is in just those agencies. Eliminating vast portions of a politicized bureaucracy, rooting out deep state actors. The kind of cleansing you wanted when you voted last November. Gabbard stating the intelligence community is plagued with unauthorized leaks, politicization, and weaponization of intelligence. We certainly know that, and the DNI Gabbard joins us tonight. And it's good to have you back on. Let's talk about the cuts and just how ugly these agencies are and how you did this. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. You know, I started here. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, as you know, was created almost 20 years ago in the wake of the horrific intelligence failures that surrounded the Islamist terrorist attack on 9/11 here in our country. So the ODNI was created with a very simple purpose, a very simple but critical mission, which was to ensure that intelligence from across the intelligence community was actually being integrated, that people were talking to each other and sharing intelligence, not leaving it in silos, and to exercise oversight to make sure that the intelligence being provided to the President of the United States, to Congress, to different policymakers was timely, relevant, and apolitical. Unbiased and objective intelligence to best inform some of the most critical decisions that the leaders in our country make, foremost among them the President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief. 20 years later, here we sit now where ODNI has more than doubled in size, bloated with bureaucracy, inefficiencies and redundancies, wasting taxpayer dollars, but actually getting in the way of the mission that it was charged to do. As you mentioned, it's become rife with politicization and weaponization of intelligence, some of which we've revealed and released over the last few weeks that has occurred under previous directors and previous administrations. And so rooting out those deep state actors who are violating the oath that every intelligence professional swears to the Constitution of the United States and ultimately undermining this core national security mission that those at ODNI are charged with, that the intelligence community is charged with. So today's announcement is the first step to aggressively get after our core national security mission, root out those deep state actors, and really focus on delivering what the American people deserve.
When did this all get broken? Was it under Obama? I mean, do you have any estimation of when this all started to fail? And when did politics seep into something like intelligence, which is just so toxic?
Well, you know, I think when we go back 20 years ago, when this organization was first stood up, ultimately it made some progress in integrating intelligence. But the reality is, as we've just revealed over these last few weeks, under the Obama administration, which came very quickly, we saw that deep hand of politicization within this organization, ODNI, but also in CIA and the FBI, across the NSA, across the intelligence community, which tells us very clearly what I think most of us already knew, which was politicization of intelligence existed long before, and we've seen a lot of different examples of that.
And the 37 that you've stripped of security clearances, these current and former intelligence officials are a part of that problem.
That's right.
These are not household names. Is when I looked through the list, I didn't really recognize any of the names. You know, maybe one or two I had seen before, but they're not people that you would know. Who exactly are they, and what did they do to earn that, to earn the stripping of that clearance?
Yeah, well, you know, holding a security clearance, it really speaks about trust. Trust in those who have a security clearance, that they will protect our nation's secrets and that they will abide by the Constitution and act in the best interests of the American people. Those who were on that list that we released yesterday, where I directed, at President Trump's direction, the revocation of their security clearances, came about because they broke that trust. A number of different examples, people who leaked, conducted unauthorized leaks of intelligence to their friends in the propaganda media, those who participated in this Russiagate hoax, the manufactured intelligence assessment that came after President Trump was elected in 2016,
that Russia
went on
wanted
to
Trump.
Exactly, creating a document that they knew was false, falsely claiming that Putin wanted to help get Trump elected, when really the intelligence in the months leading up to the election said exactly the opposite. So bottom line is, these individuals, and there are more, unfortunately chose to put their own self-interest, their own personal ambition, their own political interests ahead of the oath that they took to the Constitution and taking action to serve the best interests of the American people.
I want to get to one thing. There's been a pretty good freedom fight that you've been a part of, and I think it's a great story because I'm terrified of what's happening in the United Kingdom. They're moving away from a lot of freedoms, and here's an example. The UK is now dropping its demand to access Apple's protected data of American citizens. Yourself and the Vice President J.D. Vance fought this. They wanted Apple to create a way for their government, the UK government, to retrieve content of any user worldwide uploaded to its cloud service. Again, this is another way to get eyes on everybody, which is exactly what governments want to do, and it's one of the biggest threats, I think, to our personal freedoms. But talk about that.
Yeah, Rob, you know, one of the ways that, unfortunately, too often our civil liberties are undermined by governments is in the name of safety or security. Well, we have to keep you safe, and so we're going to start to peel away and take away your freedoms and undermine your civil liberties. And this is one example of that. I got notice of this shortly after taking on this position as Director of National Intelligence, and was deeply disturbed by this demand that was being made of Apple, an American company, to create this backdoor for the UK government to gain access to end-to-end encrypted personal information that you or I or others upload into Apple's cloud without any permission from the user who owns that information, and doing all of this in the name of safety and security. So this was an issue I informed President Trump about immediately, as well as the vice president. I know they both raised this with Prime Minister Starmer during his visit to Washington, D.C. It's one that I continue to work with and engage on with our partners in the UK, and thankfully they came to the right conclusion, which was to drop this demand of Apple, ensuring, therefore, at least in this example, that our privacy and our civil liberties is protected when we have our own private information in the cloud. The UK and no other government at this point is able to build in this backdoor to be able to access it.
That's great. Yeah, that's important stuff. Now we just have to get them to come back to free speech. Watching people get arrested for offending people in the UK. We have to stay vigilant. Yeah, it's really scary. Hopefully the president can lean on Keir Starmer a little bit more on that one, because those videos are terrifying. Seeing people just arrest, they said something offensive and they get arrested. Like what world are we in?
Online. They put up a post on social media and people are getting arrested.
They seem oblivious to what that can lead to. The DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Trump works to end the race grift and the left loses it. We're going to talk about the Smithsonian coming up next.
White folk are quick to play fast and loose with our history. They can run over our dead as if it doesn't matter.
Welcome back. The president wants to crack down on the Smithsonian for promoting one-sided, divisive political narratives. The administration is now requiring specific national museums and exhibits to reflect unity, progress, and values that define the American story. The president blasting the Smithsonian on Truth Social, saying the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke, adding the Smithsonian is out of control. Everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. And he has a good point. This country has brought more prosperity to the world than any other, but the left only focuses on the things that it believes are the negatives, which only survive through race baiting, the left does, and selling oppression, which is what they do. They have to focus on the bad things because they want to destroy the country. They want to rebuild it in their image. And they lost it, especially in regards to Trump's slavery comment. Take a look at this.
The president targeting what he calls woke exhibits, saying museums should focus more on America's, quote, brightness and not on, quote, how bad slavery was.
Donald Trump says that one of the reasons for his crackdown on Smithsonian museums is, quote, everything discussed is how bad slavery was.
Who is this guy? Is he a publicist for slavery, like a lobbyist on behalf of slavery? It doesn't make any sense.
White folk are quick to play fast and loose with our history. They can run over our dead as if it doesn't matter.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Badia Ungar-Sargon is an opinion editor at Newsweek. Bob Woodson, founder and president of the Woodson Center, and to you both, thanks for coming on. Bob, I want to start with you. I don't think there's anyone in the world that's not aware of what slavery was and how bad it was. The problem is that one side in this country wants to perpetuate and talk about this endlessly for the rest of the time.
They really do. You know, they assume that Black American history came from slave ships to plantations to the ghetto without any redemption. We have documented that Black Americans, the very values that enabled Black Americans to survive slavery and Jim Crow, are the ones that are being denigrated by the Smithsonian. And in fact, they engage in what I call intellectual profanity. In 2020, they released a chart on their website entitled Aspects and Assumptions of Whiteness in the United States.
Jesus.
And they list as whiteness, hard work, self-reliance, nuclear family, belief in one God, delayed gratifications, no tolerance for deviance, respect for authority, objectivity, and linear thinking. So the corollary of that is if you're authentically Black, then you have to be just the opposite of this. This, to me, is the most outrageous and insulting statement coming that no one has challenged, and I think the president is right to do so.
Yeah. Badia, I mean, most of this has been really pushed along by white liberals, is the irony of it all. And it started in the last 10 or 15 years, this obsession with slavery, race, and oppression. Talk about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for having me in such august company. I'm such a huge, huge acolyte of Mr. Woodson. I've read everything you've ever written, and being on with you is truly an honor. People like you who speak the truth give the permission to the rest of us to say what we know is true, but it was for a long time verboten to utter. And of course, this started with what sociologists called the Great Awakening, which began in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, to where white liberals became more radical in their views on race than Black and Hispanic Americans. They really drove the moral panic around race that engulfed this country, which really peaked in 2020. And thank God, in no small part thanks to Donald Trump, is on the wane. And I'll just give you one example of this Great Awakening. In 2018, a Yale study found that there was a difference between how white liberals and white conservatives talk to Blacks and Hispanics. And the difference is this: white liberals, when they talk to Blacks and Hispanics, they dumb down their vocabulary. They use smaller words than when they talk to other whites. And white conservatives don't do that. And I remember the first time I saw that study and I thought to myself, and we liberals call conservatives racist? The absolute audacity, because of course the entire leftist culture is suffused with the same kind of racist paternalism that Yale study found.
That is unbelievable. Great stuff. Badia, thank you so much. Bob Woodson, to you. I'm completely out of time, but that was a great conversation. Good to see you both. Thanks.
God bless.
Thank you.
This is going on because Trump courted extremists and harnessed their grievance and their disaffection, and that motivated the inception of MAGA. You cannot find me one great president in American history who is remembered for how he divided us.
A little look at the News Nation there. Some big TV news. Yesterday, Nexstar, which is this big media group that owns News Nation, that network we just showed you, already the largest owner of local television stations in the U.S., announced plans to acquire what's called Tegna, which is the fourth largest broadcaster. The deal valued at more than $6 billion. If approved by our FCC, this merger would make Nexstar the nation's dominant media conglomerate, ownership of more than 265 television stations across the country. Some conservatives and consumer groups are pushing back, even Newsmax ourselves, opposing the FCC approval of this merger. And Tom Basile is here now with us to talk about why and what this is. And Tom, good to see you. Explain why the merger is so important. What is so important here?
Rob, imagine this. Imagine if one or two companies, or maybe one or two individuals, owned virtually every broadcast television station in the United States. At issue here is really the survival of broadcasting rules that were put in place by Ronald Reagan to prevent large media monopolies that could discriminate against conservative and other viewpoints. You know, Reagan, remember back then there were only 3 networks, right? He said none of those guys or others should actually be able to buy enough stations to reach more than 25% of America. And he did it for good reason. You know, these are liberal stations. They could move into every small town in America, in every swing state, and totally then control the narrative in American politics. And, you know, if you're a Trump supporter, for instance, he never would have been elected if this is the type of thing that was able to go on.
How would the cap that's in place, how would Nexstar's merger be impacted by it?
Yeah, so the FCC had already granted Nexstar a waiver when they merged with Tribune TV in 2018. Over time, the cap was raised from 25 to 39%. Nexstar then got a waiver so that they can now already reach 63% of Americans. The Tegna deal is even bigger. It would give them access to 80% of U.S. households.
Wow. The danger, I guess, as we see it, is what?
Well, you know, we just heard from Chris Cuomo, right? You've got a left-leaning outlet that owns News Nation, employs guys like Cuomo, And for the past 4 years, News Nation, for instance, has been very hostile to President Trump and to conservatives. Their primetime hosts, all very left-wing. And look, it's a free country. If you're interested in that, that's fine. But we're supposed to be protecting viewpoint diversity and true free speech and independent media in this country. And this type of a deal runs counter to all of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Tom Basile, we appreciate it. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Late Tuesday, Newsmax reported the company saw its key broadcasting sector revenues grow by more than 28%. The company saw overall revenue growth at 18%. Some big numbers indicating the company's still on a very high growth trajectory. Earlier this year, the company went public on the New York Stock Exchange. To get the full second quarter earnings report, you can go to newsmaxinvest.com. Next in news from the left, as the Democrat Party collapses, a brilliant solution.
Chris Murphy, Sherrod Brown, Mondami, these people, AOC, they are the same in the fact that they're brave and they break through.
All right, news from the left. The New York Times coming out with an article saying the Democrat Party faces a voter registration crisis, bleeding support beyond the ballot box, revealing of the 30 states that track registration by political party. Dems lost ground to Republicans in every one between the 2020 and 2024 elections. That four-year swing toward the Republicans adds up to 4.5 million voters. It is panic time for Democrats. Morning Joe has a solution.
The people who are breaking through are brave, right? They talk like humans. They make the case. And the people who fight get support. And the people who cave or are mealy-mouthed or are, very sort of corporatist-y, that crew, the crew that's afraid, cannot breakthrough. Chris Murphy, Sherrod Brown, Mondami, these people, AOC, they're not all exactly the same politically, but they are the same in the fact that they're brave and they break through.
Mamdani and AOC. Hopefully people keep listening to her. All right, Washington Post with advice on what to do if your friend tells a racist joke. You're going to like this next.
My longtime friend made a racist joke like it was no big deal. How do I navigate this? I think you just have to say, wow, I have to stand in for these really uncomfortable, hard moments because it's the right thing to do.
Washington Post right there giving advice on how to handle a racist joke. The comments section mocked them so hard they had to turn off the comments. One guy saying, okay, so wait, what was a joke? What if it was funny? Infinity's next. See you tomorrow.